So Mark chapter 5, reminding us that Jesus is the perfect servant, that the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve, and to even give his life as a ransom for all of us, and teaching us what it means to love, what it means to serve. And here in chapter 5, it's pretty, well, the book of Mark, Gospel of Mark, is action-packed, and chapter 5 is a great example of that. But we've kind of seen it up to this point, even just the one chapter is there's a lot in it. Though Mark is the shortest of the Gospels, it definitely is the most action-packed. You have one thing right after another. They were just with Jesus in the boat, afraid for their lives at the end of chapter 4 last week we looked at. And Jesus got them to the other side, but not like they thought that he would. But he also showed them that he was Lord over the natural elements, the wind and the waves, the storm. Jesus settled. They freaked out. They were all the more afraid just as that chapter ends. Who can this be that even the wind and the sea obey him? And it's kind of like, well, you ain't seen nothing yet, boys. So here in chapter 5, we just continue with this. Because then they came to the other side of the sea, to the country of the Gadarenes. And verse 2, Mark 5, verse 2, when he had come out of the boat, immediately there met him out of the tombs a man with an unclean spirit, who had his dwelling among the tombs, and no one could bind him, not even with chains, because he had often been bound with shackles and chains, and the chains had been pulled apart by him, and the shackles broken in pieces. And neither could anyone tame him or hold him. And always, night and day, he was in the mountains and in the tombs, crying out and cutting himself with stones. Now when he saw Jesus from afar, he ran and worshipped him. And he cried out with a loud voice and said, "What have I to do with you, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? I implore you, or I beg you, by God, that you do not torment me." For Jesus had said to him, "Come out of the man, unclean spirits." Then he asked him, "What is your name?" And he answered, saying, "My name is Legion, for we are many." Also he begged him earnestly that he would not send them out of the country. Now there were a large herd of pigs that were feeding near the mountains. So all the demons begged Jesus, saying, "Send us to the pigs, then that we may enter them." And at once Jesus gave them permission. But then the unclean spirits went out and entered into the pigs. There were about 2,000, and the herd ran violently down the steep place into the sea, and drowned in the sea. So those who fed the swine fled, and they went and told it in the city and in the country, and they went out to see what it was that had happened. Then they came to Jesus and saw the one who had been demon-possessed and had the legion there sitting and clothed and in his right mind. And they were afraid again. And those who saw it told them how it happened to him who had been demon-possessed, and about the pigs, the swine. Then they began to plead with Jesus to depart from their region. And when he got into the boat, he who had been demon-possessed begged Jesus that he might be with him. However, Jesus did not permit him. He said to him, "Go home to your friends and tell them what great things the Lord has done for you, and how he has had compassion on you. And he departed and began to proclaim in Decapolis all that Jesus had done for him, and all marveled. So, here in the first half of this chapter, we'll see if we get through the chapter, but verse 1 through 20 there, a very common thing that would have happened during the time that Jesus came, especially, and that is people possessed with demons. Seem to be, these things are recorded for us, but I would venture to say this happened a whole lot, because Jesus would cause demons to tremble just coming through the town, wherever he went. But after such a powerful moment on the sea, his disciples just saw him command the waves in the sea, and you would think it's time for a break, right? But it's just, they're hit with the devil himself, with demons, with someone just completely out of his mind. In Matthew's account, he gives us a little more info. This guy was totally naked. He was completely cut up. There were actually two of these guys. One of the reasons the Gospels can be relied upon is all of those subtle differences. Matthew 8:28 tells us clearly there were two demon-possessed guys. Mark just records one. Not sure why, but it's like I say, I always love finding those little differences because it actually validates. If they were exactly the same account, you'd get a little fishy. There would be a little, maybe something else going on here. But Mark just finds it reasonable to just let us know about this one. And again, he's really living among the tombs, living in a cemetery almost. And we learn some things about what it means when someone's demon-possessed. And I say we learn things because most of what we know about demons, about fallen angels, about demon possession, sadly in our day, and it's not really our fault, but sadly most of what we know about demon possession and, just the study of demons and fallen angels comes from Hollywood. It comes from the movies. It comes from books even. It can come from all these different things, witches and goblins and ghosts and things that have taken us by storm, and bestsellers and all that. Very little in the Bible that really describes these things, but here we have one of those rare moments. We know that the chains were broken. That's some strength. That's what we would call supernatural. And demons have that kind of strength. Demons are not to be played with. The saddest thing in the world is the popularity of Ouija boards, because it's right there in the game. In the name is thinking that it's a game, but it's very powerful. It's very there's a source there. That's one thing we cannot overlook. We cannot deny the reality of that demons exist, that these things really are real, valid. How did they become? How are demons? All we know from Scripture is that Lucifer fell from heaven, and that from Revelation 12 we learn that a third of the angels fell with him. And you could get into a whole thing there, but fallen angels, really, we don't know exactly where and when they began. We just have these clues in Scripture, like we don't know when Satan fell from heaven. We don't know when that was. We don't need to know. But it's just always good to point out these different things. In fact, Satan himself, we know from Ezekiel 28, interesting chapter on background of Satan, the origin of Satan. Lucifer was his name, but we're told in Ezekiel 28, beginning at verse 13 and going on, that he was perfect in all of his ways. He was the anointed cherub above all other cherubs, kind of the top angel in charge, until there's this tragic word in Ezekiel 28 that says he was perfect in all his ways until iniquity, sin, filled his heart. And we know exactly what that sin was because of Isaiah 14. The 5 I wills, and if you haven't gotten those down, Isaiah chapter 14, Satan is in the throne room of God and he says, I will be like the Most High. I will do this. I will do that. Spouting off, and God says, no, you won't. Kicked him out of heaven. My translation. But that is how Satan, that's how Lucifer, this anointed cherub, began this whole rebellion, really. And a third of the angels fell from heaven. And you have the very beginning kind of stages of these demonic activities. Genesis 6 is another, if you're looking at origins of these things, where the fallen angels, which they're called the sons of God, an interesting term, but in the Old Testament that was just terms for angels. They came down and had sexual relations with the daughters of men, and you had these Nephilim, these creatures, and many people think that's where the giants came from, and they probably did. So we have this whole background on demons, on Satan, on those origins of him. But one thing from Mark chapter 5 here, we learn that demons have this supernatural strength. No one could bind him, no matter what they tried. So this person, well, these two, I pointed out, Matthew in Matthew chapter 8, the parallel account, we're actually told there were 2 demon-possessed guys, but Mark just records one, probably because this one was worse, more vocal. It says that he was shouting and that no one could contain him, and he was night and day, just always. You know, they probably just thought of him as the town crazy loony guy out there in the cemetery. And he was just cutting himself. He was making no sense, I'm sure, completely naked. These guys just got done on the boat with Jesus. And I couldn't help but think about just men's retreats that we've been on, or great times of worship, of just where we spend such a great, awesome time, and then we go back to work, or we go back to life, and we get hit with, maybe it's not a naked demon-possessed guy with cutting himself, but it can be just as crazy. It can be just as and that can happen so often. We come out of this incredible moment where Jesus commands the sea to calm, and it calms, and then all of a sudden there's a whole nother storm over in this area. And actually the area is an interesting study in and of itself. The Gadareans, this area, the reason it's called the Gadareans, it's called quite a few, there's some different names for it. I've always liked the Gadareans just because biblically it reminds me the tribe of Gad ended up staying. Remember when they went to inherit, it was Reuben, Gad, and half the tribe of Manasseh that stayed behind and didn't want to enter totally in. Well, this is that region. And it lets you know there's a spiritual lesson there for those that don't want to enter fully into the promises of God, the promised land, and they're just kind of on the fence. Well, if you do that, you end up with pig farmers. Because pigs are not kosher. They're not supposed to be here in this region. But this is the Gadareans. This is a place of compromise. And so you end up with dark and, just worldly kind of things, like them having pigs here. Why do we know that they cared? I almost actually titled the message, People or Pigs? They cared more about the pigs, the people of the town. They come to Jesus. They could care less about this guy that was tortured for all this time. Well, two of them, according to Matthew again. But demon-possessed guy, they don't care about. But all of a sudden, they're pigs. When pigs fly, that's the title of the message. Yeah, they go, to their death. They made money off those pigs. They were so they cared more about those kinds of things rather than, and it reminds us a little bit of the scribes and the Pharisees that were so tedious and so critical at Jesus healing just because it was the Sabbath day, or healing or doing these different miracles, claiming he can forgive sins. All of the things that they would get uptight about. Totally out of their mind is the well-being of the sick guy, the person that was being healed. That's completely out of their mind. They could care less. A lot like the people of the town here. But Jesus, in an awesome way here, he just showed them he has total command, total strength, total power over the natural, as I mentioned. But here in chapter 5, the contrast you shouldn't be missed. Not just the natural realm. The disciples are seeing he has power over supernatural, over the demons. In fact, it's interesting how these demons know God. They don't have to be convinced. They're not trying to convince others that he's not the Christ. They're not trying to convince the disciples not to follow him. Rather, they're spot on, aren't they? You are the Son of the living God. Son of the Most High God is what they say there in verse 7. And again, they are fully aware of who Jesus is, and they're also aware of their own destiny, which we need to remind ourselves of that. Because the demons believed and trembled. James tells us that in James chapter 2, verse 19. The demons believe, but they tremble. But notice, do not torment me. Now in Matthew, the parallel account again, Matthew 8, thought I wrote the verse down for that, but yeah, 8:29. So in Matthew 8:29, they say, do not torment us before our time. So there's a hint there of the demons know that they have an end. They know that they have punishment waiting. You can feel it in the flavor of this story. They're begging Jesus just for some more time. Let us go party in the pigs for a while. And it's amazing that they get the okay. They go for it. Why? Because Jesus cares about people. Jesus cares about this guy that's totally out of his mind. In fact, I meant to talk about cutting himself with stones, crying, wailing, yelling. The devil doesn't really have any new tricks. This stuff's been going on for a long, long time. People cutting themselves. And we wonder why. We want to blame it on some psychological reason, or their upbringing, or something in their past. And there may be something there, but underneath it, it's demons. It's wicked. Just like homosexuality. Why does someone become a homosexual? Well, because this happened to them when they were really young, right? No. There's wickedness in the world. Homosexuality is because of sin. Also, that's why people lie. It's because of sin. Also, and we like to categorize and think, well, no, this sin can be fixed, right? This sin can be treated with a pill and with this, that, or the other. No, all sin has a cure, and it's the same. And we're reading about it right now. Whether you're cutting yourself, whether you're thinking of killing yourself in different ways, whether you're, whatever the diagnosis may be, the bottom line is it's sin. And Jesus truly saves. Jesus truly frees. I mean, whom the Son sets free is free indeed. It's not partially free. It's, it's absolutely free indeed. And you'll be radical for believing that, by the way. You'll get all kinds of backlash from many people that go to higher educations and they have college degrees and things. But Jesus heals. And these guys had to be blown away. I mean, just to see this man that in one instance, screaming, cutting himself naked, all of a sudden, when Jesus is through, he's clothed, he's in his right mind, he was never that way. How could you not be thrilled for the guy? I'll tell you how, when your bank account's affected. That's what these guys were concerned about. You gotta leave now. And it's sad, but it's also revealing, isn't it? What's in the heart of so many. Also in my notes I have, just so you guys don't worry, demons cannot possess a born-again Christian, a born-again believer. The Holy Spirit lives within you. And so it's important that we understand that. It's kind of funny, it's understanding that all of a sudden the scary movies, the scary stories, even stories about demons, they kind of make you chuckle at times because you understand the one that's in control. He lives within me. And yeah, it can be a little eerie. It can be a little, these stories that we hear and things like that. They can disturb us, maybe keep us up at night. But it was one of my old Bible teachers at the Bible college that said we don't really need to be concerned with demon possession. We need to be more concerned with demon obsession in our culture. People paying to go see these things, witches, goblins, Ouija boards, tarot cards, the psychics, all of these different things that come in such innocent, seemingly innocent ways. They're actually deadly. They're very wicked, dark, and deadly. And Satan can convince many. Also, demons cannot possess a Christian, but they can oppress us. And just like Satan is constantly accusing the brethren, constantly, the demons are trying to get you off track. They're trying everything they can, and they oppress, they depress, they just do everything they can to keep you. And they're Satan's, Satan's workers, Satan's little minions, right? They just do his bidding. Someone said, why does Satan have demons? Because God can be everywhere at once. Satan cannot. So he needs quite a few others, right? Little hands here and there to do his bidding. And that's exactly what that's what demons are. They're just his little workers. But praise God, they have their day coming. Revelation 20, verse 15. I don't have it memorized, so I'll turn over there. There has to be a reason I wrote that one down. Revelation 20, verse 15. Their end, the Satan and his demons. Revelation 20, verse 15. Then death and Hades were cast into the lake of fire. This is the second death, and anyone not found written in the book of life was cast into the lake of fire. So that goes along with Satan and his demons. Another place Jesus talks about going into outer darkness and hell, which was made for Satan and his demons. Hell was never made for mankind. It was never made for humans. But the whole purpose of it is this kind of chamber of that Satan and his demons would be held there. And they are. But if you ever heard that term, when pigs fly, that's where this came from. That's where it came from. It's right here in Mark chapter 5. They go down the hill, they fly off that hill. I think it's Matthew's account, or it might be Luke's. All three Gospels, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, have this story in it. And it's kind of fun to see the differences, because I think it might be Luke that explains them kind of flying into, And someone said, yeah, you have the swine flu, too. Oh. Yeah, there's another good dad joke you can take away from it. You'd be happy that was the title I came up with. I could have done a lot more. Okay. I should say I could have done a lot worse. Yeah. But when pigs fly, I thought, yeah. So, amazing. Jesus permits, and I think I might have brought this up at a different time in a different study. Jesus answers the demons' request, yes, right? You can go into the pigs. He says yes to what the demons are asking. This demon-possessed guy that's been healed, he just says, Lord, I want to go with you. I want to be with you. Jesus says no. Interesting how Jesus knows what's best, really, for all. And sometimes when the Lord tells you no, it's for your own good. And this guy going home to his friends, he'd become an incredible evangelist, wouldn't he? Go home. That's what Jesus tells him in verse 19. Jesus did not permit him. He said to him, go home to your friends and tell them what great things the Lord has done for you and how he has had compassion on you. Again, this guy would become an incredible witness just seeing him. Friends that probably hadn't seen him in a long time. He was up on the mountain sleeping with the dead and cutting himself and doing all kinds of things. They would have been blown away. And so, when Jesus says no to your request, take it to heart. Maybe he's keeping you and he has much greater things in store for you. Now, verse 21, Mark 5:21. Now when Jesus had crossed over again by boat to the other side, a great multitude gathered to him. And he was by the sea, that is the Sea of Galilee, and behold, one of the rulers of the synagogue came, Jairus by name. And when he saw him, he fell at his feet. Now Jairus is falling at Jesus' feet, understanding truly this is Jesus, and he's doing it by faith. The demons earlier, the man that had the legion, those that, could have been thousands of demons within him, falling at Jesus' feet and worshipped out of fear of themselves being tormented. In fact, they said that. Don't torment us. So it was there's this difference here. But this guy Jairus, and he's a ruler. To have a ruler fall at his feet and fall down in any way is a big deal. This is humility on display. Verse 23, Jairus begged Jesus earnestly, saying, my little daughter lies at the point of death. Come and lay your hands on her, that she may be healed, and she will live. So Jesus went with him, and a great multitude followed him and thronged him. They were just trying to get to the front, get to him. Verse 25, now a certain woman had a flow of blood for 12 years, and had suffered many things from many physicians. She had spent all that she had and was no better, but rather grew worse. Verse 27, when she heard about Jesus, she came behind him in the crowd and touched his garment. For she said, if only I may touch his clothes, I shall be made well. Immediately the fountain of her blood was dried up, and she felt in her body that she was healed of the affliction, the sickness. And Jesus, immediately knowing in himself that power had gone out of him, turned around in the crowd and said, "Who touched my clothes?" But his disciples said to him, "You see the multitude thronging you, and you say, 'Who touched me?'" And he looked around to see her who had done this thing, but the woman, fearing and trembling, knowing what had happened to her, came and fell down before him and told him the whole truth. And he said to her, "Daughter, your faith has made you well. Go in peace and be healed of your affliction." While he was still speaking, some came from the ruler of the synagogue's house, who said, "Your daughter is dead. Why trouble the teacher any further?" As soon as Jesus heard the word that was spoken, he said to the ruler of the synagogue, "Do not be afraid, only believe." And he permitted no one to follow him except Peter, James, and John, the brother of James. Then he came to the house of the ruler of the synagogue and saw a tumult and those who wept and wailed loudly. And when he came in, he said to them, "Why make this commotion and weep? The child is not dead, but sleeping." And they ridiculed him. But when he had put them all outside, he took the father and the mother of the child and those who were with him, and entered where the child was lying. Then he took the child by the hand and said to her, "Talitha cumi," which is translated, "Little girl, I say to you, arise." Immediately the girl arose and walked, for she was 12 years of age. And they were overcome with great amazement. But he commanded them strictly that no one should know it, and said that something should be given to her to eat. I love Jesus. He's always wanting to eat. Or just taking care of other people and making sure they get enough to eat. But you have another big contrast in this story. A woman that's, for 12 years, she's had this affliction, this sickness, this thing inside of her that no one could address. No physician, no amount of money that she had spent could take care of it. She was just kind of being neglected, I'm sure. She was put out of any holy place. She was considered unclean. Most speculate that she was a Gentile. One of the reasons is her trembling and being so fearful. And that's another important thing to note, considering Jesus is on his way to the ruler of the synagogue. He's on his way to minister to the Jews, to be the king of the Jews, if you will, healing one of the Jews' daughters. And on his way, he finds a Gentile woman and heals her. That's the story of the church. Jesus is on his way to be king of the Jews, to come back for the Jews, to be their Messiah, to be the one. He's on his way. But on his way, he's healed us. We're the Gentile woman, and we've got many issues. But he's healed the church. So there's a lot that could be said just within the kind of the sky view of this story. But Jesus has time for everyone. That's another thing that blows you away. I'm sure Jairus, he has servants, he has other people who are concerned, let's get to this, let's go, we don't have time. And yet, Jesus says, no, I need to find out who touched me. And his disciples even think, well, what are you talking about? There's this huge crowd and you're asking who touched you? And Jesus always has time. It's amazing. Well, he lives outside of time, doesn't he? And he gets to tell her something she hadn't heard probably maybe since she was little. And that is daughter. Words that would have cut to her heart deeply, I believe. Daughter, your faith has made you well. Go in peace, in verse 34 there. And it's so, this story is so cool because it's drastic in, you've got her who hears these words. She had to melt when she heard them. But it says, while Jesus was still speaking, someone comes and says, hey, your daughter's dead. Which is a fact, right? His daughter is dead. And sometimes we can be hit with those. And we can think sometimes as Christians, we're always being attacked. We're always under attack. And Satan, he's the author of lies, right? And he is. He's the father of lies. But sometimes it's just a fact. Like in this guy's case. Your daughter's dead. What do you do then? It's not a lie. It's not an attack from the enemy. It's just a fact. And it's part of that I believe when you react in those times, well, it's part of maturing too, not believing that everything is an attack from the enemy. We can believe that sometimes, that as Christians, we're just always under attack. But really, a lot of times it's just facts. It's just, this has happened. You know, fill in the blank, whatever fact it may be. We don't like it. We might fight against it. The radical thing that Jesus does in this moment is tell Jairus, tell the father, basically don't believe the fact. I'm bigger than that. It's in that moment Jesus is saying, believe. Don't stop believing. That's kind of, that popular song. Don't stop believing. Yeah. This is where it came from. Jesus tells him, don't stop believing in a way. But he says, do not be afraid. Which is another thing. When you hear news like your daughter is dead, that's the last thing you want to hear anyone. Don't be afraid. Don't believe, and don't stop believing. And I like breaking down what only believe, because the Greek language, which this is written in, it has such vast things. I just wrote one of these down, but for only believe, when Jesus says only believe to Jairus, behind that is consider something to be true, worthy of your trust. I love that. Consider something to be true that's worthy of your trust. I hear Jesus saying that to him, It's like, I am the way, the truth, and the life. Apart from me, you cannot see God, basically. And so he takes Peter, James, and John with him. And this is one of those, this is why we believe that Peter, James, and John were troublemakers, because Jesus always had to have them close to him. Didn't want to let them out of his sight. And they most likely, out of all those disciples, they needed to see this to strengthen their faith. Peter, he would go on to be really effective in the church. One of the first guys, to bring in, after he preaches a sermon, thousands are saved by Peter. James, John, these guys would go on to be incredible disciples and leaders in the church, men of God. James would be a martyr for him. And so Jesus takes them with him, and I love Jesus cannot do anything until he puts the mockers out. Did you notice that? He doesn't just ignore them and kind of go his way, they're ridiculing him. And it says in verse 40, they ridiculed him, but when he had put them all outside. That took some chutzpah. That took some guts. That took a backbone. He didn't just, well, I'm doing the work of the Lord and I don't want to make anyone upset. No, he put them out. Why? Because they're mocking. They're scoffing. They're scoffing him and ultimately the life of faith. The walk of faith. See, faith is another thing. In my notes, I've got so much in here, but faith is not an event. Faith is not a one-time step. Faith is a lifestyle. Faith is something that we basically practice. Faith is a lifestyle of practice. We walk by faith. And so Jesus taking every step with Jairus, and now he's got Peter, James, and John with him. Believing with every step. Faith is growing as they get closer. And all of a sudden, the closer they get, the mocking, the yelling, the cussing, the stuff gets louder, doesn't it? As they're coming closer and closer to seeing this actually come to pass. Seeing Jesus have all authority over life. I mean, he's going to raise this girl from the dead. And all along the way, the enemy's not silent. They're mocking him, but I love that. Jesus put the mockers out. And then he puts the family in order. Takes the father and the mother and reunites them with their child and let's all eat. Jesus is just the perfect example of what it means to put a life back together. Even the demon-possessed guy before. I mean, talk about lost, broken, a harm to himself and others. That's what Satan ultimately, demon possession ultimately will do. It just harms you and others. But now here with this story of this family that would be totally devastated with this death, with this loss, is built back up, put back together. Though the mockers are there, they must be dealt with. They're put out. And Jesus restores this little girl, and he restores the other girl, both being 12 years old. Well, both for 12 years. As long as this little girl's been alive, that other girl has had nothing but pain, anguish, nothing but hard times. And Jesus, in one day, he makes these two complete, if you will. The little girl and the girl with the issue of the blood. But I like that. Your faith is not an event, but a practice. It's a lifestyle of faith that we have. When the worst news you could ever think of comes, do you believe? Or do you cave in to the fear? When the worst news you could think of hits you. Also, Proverbs 18 is interesting. Proverbs 18:17. In Proverbs, this is always just a good one to remember, but in light of this story, somebody came along and told him their case, right? Your daughter's dead. That's the case they brought before him. But in Proverbs 18:17, the first one to plead his case, his cause, seems right until Jesus comes along and raises the girl from the dead. That's not what Proverbs says. But the first one that comes to plead their cause seems right until his neighbor comes and examines him. And Jesus went and examined that little girl. And he found her to just be sleeping. So there's some wisdom in that. The first one that comes along and spouts out, your daughter is dead. All this terrible thing has happened, whatever it is, whatever the news may be. It can seem right to us. But just wait. Be patient. See what the Lord might do. Because He's the author of life. He's the resurrection and the life. Love it. Father, thank you for your word. How rich, again, how much is packed in the gospel. And just the reading of the events, Lord, that took place as you walked here on this earth. Lord, may we be those of faith, those who practice and live our lives, that lifestyle of faith. You teach us more and more just how to trust and obey, because there is no other way, Lord. And I pray as we sing these songs from our hearts, Lord, we would be those that worship you in spirit and in truth, Lord. For you are looking for those who will worship you in spirit and in truth. So let's sing, shall we?